Kawa, Japan, saw a kind of rain no one's ever seen before. It was raining tadpoles. First reason is that the wind that day was so strong, it lifted and carried all those tadpoles away in no time. The second possible reason is that big birds, such as gulls, just dropped them while they were flying to their nests. Some scientists believe these creatures were hauled off the ground by a waterspout and rained down later. By the way, that day, people found not only tadpoles, but also frogs and fish instead of puddles. And yeah, it can be raining worms too. Some people claim they've seen snake rains. Yay! It was a lovely spring in 1876 in Bath County, Kentucky. Mrs. Crouch was making soap in the yard of her house when she suddenly noticed it started raining meat. It wasn't ground meat. Those were large 3 inches in diameter chunks of meat falling right on her. 2 volunteers were brave enough to try that grisly-looking meat of unknown origin, and they said it tasted like lamb or deer. Well, they were no foodies. It turned out to be beef. Such cases were registered in Europe too, and the only logical explanation of meat showers is that buzzards flying over just drop meat pieces they save for lunch. With no luggage, their bodies are lighter and they can fly easier. Wow, I wish it rained donuts on me once. Rains aren't unusual for Oakville, Washington, but this one still doesn't have any solid explanation. Instead of common raindrops, people watch translucent jelly-like blobs falling down from the skies. These little things covered about 20 square miles. Those who got really close to that sort of rain said they felt bad the next day. Scientists studied those blobs and realized they contained human white blood cells, but other tests later showed it wasn't true. Some people think these might have been evaporated jellyfish, which resulted in rain, or it could simply be some waste from a commercial plane. Almost the same thing happened in 2012 in Dorset, UK. During a hailstorm, people found gelatin balls together with hailstones. Researchers collected these goopy balls and stored them in a fridge to study later. Turns out it wasn't necessary, since the slimy blobs didn't melt at room temperature. No one is sure even now about where the balls came from, but the first idea was that those were eggs of some aquatic animal carried by birds right up in the sky. Later tests proved that the jelly substance was a chemical that acts as a water lock and is used in many commercial products, even cables to protect them from water. Australian spiders are notorious, and to frighten people, they even learn how to rain. Spider rains are a pretty common thing for Australia because of ballooning. They climb up trees, then spin strands of silk, and that's why the wind can carry them away. Usually people don't notice it, but when it's wet, hundreds of spiders climb up to more desirable places. People say that when it rains or snows, it's possible to see spiders literally drift down on those webs as if they were balloons. If you ever travel to the Mekong Delta, you'll probably have a chance to see glowing balls rising up from the water and beelining straight into the air. The locals call these the Naga fireballs. Sizes may vary, so these reddish balls can be as tiny as a cherry and as large as a watermelon. During the night, you can see dozens and sometimes even thousands of fireballs. Scientists don't have any solid explanation why it happens, but it's probably flammable gas released by the marshy environment. Still, a local superstition claims it's all because of a giant serpent living in the Mekong. Tornadic waterspout is a tornado that doesn't occur on land, but on water. The speed of the tornado can be really high. The water is collected and partially pulled up. It manages to pull fish and even turtles up into the air. Actually, raining fish can also be explained by this weather phenomenon. The same might happen on the snow too, but it's really rare. There are only 6 pictures of snow spouts, 4 of which were taken in Ontario. This weather phenomenon requires that the water is warm enough to produce fog, while the air temperature is really cold, next to impossible. Lava is red, sky is blue, I'm on brightside, and so are you. Okay, I made that up. But the part about the lava being red can change. That's true, especially if you see the lava flowing from Kauai Gen volcano located in Indonesia. It has a typical red color during the day, but at night it turns luminescent blue. No mystery behind it, just tons of sulfuric acid. This volcano also has the largest acidic crater lake in the world. The water there is so turquoise, you want to jump in immediately, but you probably already guessed that you should never ever do that. The fire on that volcano is also blue, and it's the largest blue fire in the world, rising up to 16 feet. In some places, water may look like glass. White salt ponds might look like windows or even portals to the world underneath. They have their look because of salt evaporation, and such lakes can be found in France and India. But the Cargill salt ponds in the San Francisco Bay Area look even crazier because of vibrant colors. The shades vary. It can be deep blue, grass green, orange, crimson, vermilion, and even magenta. The color difference is all about the different levels of salinity and tiny microorganisms living in those ponds. On the shore of the Baltic Sea in Kaliningrad District, Russia, there's an enigmatic national park called Dancing Forest. The pine trees are all crooked and twisted there. The forest didn't appear until the early 60s, when the pines were planted to make the dune sand in that area a bit more stable. It's probably the unstable sand that made those trees twist that way. Another reason why those trees are so crooked might be strong winds. Some people claim it has something to do with supernatural powers. They say this forest is a place where positive and negative energies meet. Locals believe if someone climbs through one of the rings in those trees, it'll add an extra year to this person's life. The throbbing hum in Taos, New Mexico has driven locals crazy since the 1990s. Low-frequency hum doesn't let you sleep normally. Even though scientists tried so hard to find the source of the hum, they failed. They blamed it on mechanical devices and even animals. The West Seattle hum, for example, was related to toadfish. Different variations of hum were also heard in the UK, Australia, and in some areas of the United States. Luckily, only about 2% of the world's population can hear it. Noctilescent clouds, or simply night clouds, are so rare because 1. They only form in summer, and 2. They can only be seen at latitudes between 50 and 70 degrees, both north and south. To see those clouds, the sun should be already below the horizon, but the clouds still have to be in sunlight. It's possible for the highest clouds in the atmosphere, which are located about 50 miles up. We can't see them during the day because they're too faint. Fairy rings, also known as elf rings or pixie rings, are the enigmatic rings of mushrooms that appear in grasslands and forested areas. Scientists can't explain why these fungi can form nearly perfect circles. But the superstition claims that fairy dances would burn the ground, causing mushrooms rapid growth. In fact, it's partially true. The mushrooms grow in places where grass withered. The Amazon River, one of the longest on our planet, stretches for 4,000 miles, which is more than a drive from Vienna to New Delhi. But there's one river in South America that beats the Amazon River twice. First, it's wider. Second, nobody ever saw it. It's an Amazon underwater twin called the Hamza River, and it runs 2.5 miles underneath. Scientists found it 10 years ago, back in 2011. Don't blink, or you'll miss this rarest weather phenomenon. Red sprites are electrical discharges in the sky that look a bit like an aurora. It's super powerful, about 10 times stronger than any regular lightning, but it lasts just a couple of seconds. They were first photographed in 1989, and there are still very few photos and video recordings of this lightning. To make a video that can clearly show red sprites, it should be at about 7,000 frames per second. Well, I'm out.
Are you a pro swimmer? Brave enough to take a dip in any ocean or sea? Bad news. There are some places you should avoid no matter how well you swim or dive. Some of these places have dangerous underwater rocks, strong currents and tides. Others are famous for legends about monsters and mysterious creatures. So let's dive into this aquatic horror show. Have you ever heard the word the strid? It's a variation of the word the stride that is used in Yorkshire. And it refers to a narrow section of the river wharf that's so small you could jump over it. But don't be fooled by its size, it's one of the most dangerous spots around. Even taking a step into the water can have dire consequences. The river wharf has a forceful current, and since the strid is so narrow, it's even stronger in that area. The intense water flow has eroded the limestone around the strid, which created hollow spaces much deeper than the rest of the riverbed. Here's the secret. The current has also weakened the banks of the strid from below. So, the ground you're standing on, admiring the rapid flow, is probably just a fragile ledge hanging over treacherous waters. There's no record of anyone who found themselves in the water of the strid and found their way out of it. And the worst part? You wouldn't even guess that this innocent-looking stream could be such a danger. So, my advice to you, my friend, is to stick to a safer body of water for your aquatic adventures. If you're looking for a weekend getaway in California, Horseshoe Lake is the spot for you. It's got everything. Sandy beaches, hiking trails, and picnic areas, but wait, there's more to it than meets the eye. This lake has a dark side, namely around 100 acres of dead trees that surround it. And it's not just the trees that have been claimed by this lake. The earthquakes that hit in 1989 and 1990 unleashed carbon dioxide from under the hot magma. The gas seeped out into the air, damaging all the life around the lake. Even now, Horseshoe Lake is just as dangerous as it was 30 years ago. What makes it so scary is that the levels of this toxic gas change randomly. Warning signs that are posted everywhere certainly could give a horror film touch to a fun hike in the woods. In Kauai, Hawaii, there's a group of stunning waterfalls that used to be a popular destination for tourists. Kipu Falls, as they're called, were once the go-to spot for swimming and diving. To get to them, you had to take a long walk along a dirt path until you finally arrived at a breathtaking view of a 20-foot waterfall pouring into a crystal-clear pool below. But since 2011, this area has been off-limits to the public. Why, you ask? Well, there have been a lot of accidents at Kipu Falls. Obviously, jumping off the top of the waterfall would be an obvious reason for that, but in addition, there were much more mysterious cases. Witnesses tell tales of swimmers peacefully enjoying the pool at the bottom of the falls, only to be suddenly dragged under the surface. No definite explanation was found to these accidents. The locals believe that the water spirit Mo'o is to blame because it doesn't appreciate being disturbed by loud tourists. There's also a theory of a powerful whirlpool at the bottom of the pool. In any case, guide publishers do not mention Kipu Falls anymore, and trespassing is severely punished. The Samisen Hole, located in the Gulf of Thailand, is the ultimate spot for thrill-seeking divers, but it's also the most dangerous one. With a drop of 280 feet, it's the deepest diving site in the region. But its depth is not the only reason it is considered a place to avoid. The area is a major shipping zone for giant oil tankers. The strong currents around the hole make diving even more treacherous. And if that's not enough, the Samisen Hole is also home to deadly barracudas that could easily attack unsuspecting divers. The water is so murky that visibility is nearly zero, making it challenging to spot these aggressive sea creatures. All in all, the Samisen Hole is a breathtaking but extremely hazardous spot that should only be explored by experienced divers with nerves of steel. Let me tell you about New Smyrna Beach, the shark attack capital of the world. If you're looking for a relaxing vacation spot in Volusia County, Florida, you may want to reconsider this beach. The waters around New Smyrna Beach are teeming with fish, which attracts a lot of sharks. In fact, there have been so many shark attacks reported in this area that it's earned the title of the shark attack capital of the world. Even scientists have warned that if you go for a swim there, you're bound to get up close and personal with at least one of these creatures. We are talking about a distance of 10 feet, and in many cases you wouldn't even notice it. To make matters worse, the bull shark, one of the most dangerous and aggressive types of sharks, has been spotted in these waters. Once again, Kauai is on our list. The beach on Nepali coast called Hanakapiai Beach might look like heaven on earth, but don't be fooled. To get there, you have to trek through a super steep, rocky 2-mile trail. There are no lifeguards on this remote beach, so even if you decide to take a dip in the water, you're on your own. The biggest threat to your safety is the incredibly strong rip currents. They are almost always present because there are no reefs to shield the shore. And if someone gets caught in one, there's no safe place to swim to for miles. The nearest safe beach is 6 miles away. Trust me, this beach doesn't have the best track record in terms of safety, so it's highly advised that you stay out of the water if you end up at this beach. Let me tell you about a place that looks like it's straight out of a horror movie. We're talking about Berkeley Pit, which is an artificial lake situated in Butte, Montana. The first thing you'll notice about this place is that it has an eerie blood red color that can only be described as unsettling. You might be tempted to take a dip, but that would be a grave mistake. Don't even touch it. The water is extremely dangerous due to the heavy metals present in it, such as cadmium, arsenic, zinc, lead, and copper. They come from the rocks that surround the lake and make the water super acidic. In fact, this place used to be an open-pit copper mine, hence its color. So if you want my advice, avoid this place like the plague. There are 3 lakes in Africa that maybe are the most dangerous places of all that I have mentioned so far. They're all located in Africa. Lake Monoun and Lake Nyos in Cameroon and Lake Kivu in Rwanda are all like ticking timers ready to go off. They were formed over underground pools of molten rock, and sometimes this molten rock releases toxic gases like methane and carbon dioxide right into the water. When this happens, the gases can build up until they suddenly burst out of the water, creating massive waves that can wipe out everything in their path. This type of outburst is called a limnic eruption, and it can release a cloud of poisonous gas that can be harmful to everything in the vicinity. The most terrifying part? These explosions can happen at any moment with no warning. So if you ever find yourself near one of these lakes, you'd better be on high alert, because you never know when the next accident might happen. Maybe you know other places you wouldn't recommend for a fun swim? Share your anti-recommendations in the comments below.
You've probably heard about the mysterious sea state of Atlantis. It was a high-tech utopia where people lived happily, but then something happened, and Atlantis disappeared from the face of the earth. Many people believe that this city lies at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. But what if we've been looking in the wrong place all this time? What if it's somewhere different from where they're trying to find it? What if all this time Atlantis was in the middle of the Sahara Desert? Well, this unexpected theory has some evidence, but to study this version, you first need to understand what Atlantis was and how we got to know about it. The very first mention of the mysterious city was in 360 BCE. Ancient philosopher Plato wrote about Atlantis. His work, Dialogues, described Atlantis as a rich land with advanced technologies. Its inhabitants were powerful, intelligent, and beautiful, like superhumans. He described in detail the structure of the city, and this was the main reason why many people believed in the existence of Atlantis. According to his records, the Atlanteans built this place in several concentric circles of black and red stone. Then they covered these circles with brass, tin, and precious metals. In the city, there were water channels on which ships sailed. The Atlanteans were sailors, so they built a passage from their city to the open sea. On the internet, you can find many drawings of Atlantis, created based on Plato's descriptions. Take a look at these drawings and an actual photo of the Eye of the Sahara. This place in the Sahara has a shape of several concentric circles. It looks as if a destroyed city left a trace on the sand. Many people have written online that the lost city was located there, but no one could prove it. Once upon a time, the Sahara was filled with rivers and lakes. In prehistoric times, there was only water there. So far, everything matches. The Eye of the Sahara was first discovered in the 1930s. This place was considered a crater from a fallen meteorite. But in the middle of the 20th century, scientists conducted a soil analysis and refuted the version with a fallen space rock. In the end, everyone agreed that this was a dome of molten rocks under which magma was raging. For millions of years, wind and water had been destroying the formed landscape and eventually made it look like perfect circles. But what if the Atlanteans once came to this place and used natural circles to build a city? In this case, we would have many traces and artifacts from this developed civilization. And yes, archaeologists did find some arrowheads, spears, oars, and other things there. But this has nothing to do with Atlantis. In the Eye of the Sahara, a multitude of Acheulean artifacts lies. It was an ancient tribe that frequented this place. For the first time, Acheulean tools appeared more than 1.5 million years ago. Some of the items found there may be 130,000 years old, and according to the records, Atlantis existed about 12,000 years ago. Archaeologists found no artificial structures in this place. There was also no debris or traces of a large city. People would have found some stuff if a big city with advanced technologies had existed here. The main supporter of this idea was one YouTube channel. It collected 1 million views and attracted the attention of many historians and anthropologists. The theory that the Eye of the Sahara is Atlantis was quickly refuted. People found too many discrepancies between this place and the description of Atlantis. The author tried to catch the viewer's attention by presenting external similarities between the natural landscape and the fictional ancient city. Another popular theory claims that Atlantis was a real continent located off the Bahamas, but then this city was swallowed up by the Bermuda Triangle. According to this legend, the city ruins still lie at the bottom of the triangle, but there's no confirmation of this theory either. Writer Charles Berlitz invented it. Adherents of this theory claim that the walls and streets in the western part of the Bahamas might be the ruins of Atlantis. But scientists disagree. They have proven that these walls are natural formations of coastal rocks. There are also rumors that the story of Atlantis was inspired by an actual historical catastrophe, the Black Sea Flood. This is the Bosporus, a strait in Turkey connecting the Black Sea and the Sea of Marmara. Around 5,600 BCE, the Black Sea was twice as small as it is now and had many cities on its shores. Unfortunately, a huge flood destroyed this flourishing civilization. Within a year, cities descended underwater, and surviving inhabitants moved to foreign lands and spread stories about the flood. Maybe these stories inspired Plato to come up with Atlantis. In the 1950s, people came up with another version. Atlantis was the continent that is now Antarctica. Tens of thousands of years ago, a warm continent with a developed city shifted to the northern part of our planet because of the movement of Earth's crust. The Atlanteans couldn't adapt to the cold conditions, and Atlantis was covered with a thick layer of ice. This theory was refuted when scientists began studying the tectonic plate's nature. It turned out that Earth's crust couldn't have moved such a huge continent as Antarctica. The tectonic plates don't behave this way at all. But the main question is, was Atlantis real? No one had described it before Plato. Perhaps the philosopher came up with it. Maybe he did this to emphasize the correctness of his views on life and to identify his philosophical theories. In his works, he wrote a lot about divine and human nature and how people can destroy this nature. He spoke of decaying ideal societies because of immoral behavior and vices. The Atlanteans were once moral, spiritual people who created a utopia, but then they became greedy and mean. They destroyed their inner nature, and for this, they had to witness the destruction of their city. One night, fires and earthquakes hit Atlantis and plunged the city into the sea. The higher powers punished people for their immoral behavior, and Plato also wanted everyone to be afraid of moral decay. But judging by the descriptions of the earthquakes and fire, it may seem that Atlantis was destroyed by a volcanic eruption, as it was with the ancient Roman city of Pompeii. And such destructions have happened pretty often throughout history. Natural disasters ruined many developed cities. One of the most famous cases occurred in 1100 BCE in the Mediterranean Sea, when a volcanic eruption destroyed the highly developed Minoan society. The Minoan society existed for about 2,000 years. These people mostly lived on the islands of Crete and Santorini, located north of Crete. The Minoans had beautiful houses, a sewage system, and a developed economy. They were engaged in agriculture, grew fruits and vegetables, painted frescoes, and made jewelry. They were the first people to found the thalassocracy, an empire based on the sea. They lived off of fishing, piracy, and maritime trade. At the time, they performed cruel rituals, and their way of life was far from moral. They were used to earthquakes on the island of Santorini, so they reinforced the walls of the city with wooden beams, but they didn't know what a volcanic eruption was. And when the sulfur smell appeared in the air, they didn't suspect the impending catastrophe. When the volcano spilled out tons of lava and ash, all the residents of Santorini abandoned their homes and tried to escape, but they couldn't. The eruption and earthquake triggered a tsunami. A large wave flooded the coastal part of the island of Crete. This hit the economy of the Minoans hard and destroyed their port harbor. Then, foreigners attacked Crete and finally destroyed the developed civilization. Some historians think that Plato could have referred to the Minoan Empire when describing Atlantis. Using their example, he showed how immoral actions could destroy.
You're going to Ilha de Chiamata Grande, one of the most dangerous islands in the world. There, you find yourself among rainforests, huge rocks, and grasslands. The place is home to birds, locusts, and giant cockroaches. But there's one more animal, and because of it, the island got its notorious reputation. Snakes live there, and a lot of them. So many that the place is also known as Snake Island. Will you survive there? Located just 20 miles away from the coast of Brazil, the island has an area of 43 hectares, or over 100 acres. It probably got cut off from the mainland after the last ice age. The snakes were also separated from most other animal species. They didn't have competitors and had an unlimited source of food. In such a small area, there are up to 4,000 snakes. That's one snake for every 10 square feet. It would be a difficult feat not to come across a snake on this island. Not only is this snake, the golden lancehead, one of the most numerous on the island, but it's also a highly venomous pit viper species. And it's also one of the most venomous in all of Latin America. Its venom is so potent due to the isolation of the species, with only birds sharing the land with them. To catch these birds, the snake's venom needed to become extra strong. And indeed, since they got separated from their distant relatives, their venom has become up to 5 times more powerful. Most of the time, these snakes hide in the trees or amongst leaves on the ground. If you find yourself stranded here, you'll want to keep yourself a safe distance away. Snakes mainly use their sense of smell and rely on vibrations. If you get too close to one, either stand still or slowly walk away. If you make too many vibrations, this will make them feel threatened, causing them to strike. If you spot them a safe distance away, or if you're walking toward tall grass, stamp your feet a couple of times. This will notify snakes of your presence. They won't risk taking down prey larger than they are, and will likely slither away. Carrying a stick is always a good idea, just in case you happen to come across a snake accidentally. This way, you'll have an extension of your arm that cannot be bitten. This simple thing might save your life. A stick with a V shape on the end will give you even more advantage. Even if a snake starts acting aggressively, holding it down will stop it in its tracks. But whatever happens, don't try to pick it up. Okay, but what if you get bitten? The chances are pretty high on this island, of course. First of all, don't try to get the venom out on your own. Make sure you call emergency services immediately. And once help is on the way, apply a wide bandage. A piece of clothing will do if you don't have anything else. Don't try to chase the snake trying to identify the species. Emergency services know how to figure out what venom it is. Now, just keep calm and wait for help. You might be wondering who you can call on this abandoned island. Well, since it's strictly prohibited to visit this place, there are signs advising to stay away all over the island, along with a number you can call if you run into trouble. Let's say you've successfully avoided getting bitten. The next thing to consider is what you can eat there. Snake Island was previously known as Ilha de Chiamata Grande, where Chiamata is Portuguese for forest being lit up, or forest fire. The reason for that was the fact that the entire island was deliberately set on fire to make room for a banana plantation. Unfortunately, the banana business didn't turn out to be a success, probably because farmers got sick and tired of snakes. But some banana trees still thrive today, and they can provide you with some much-needed nutrients. You'll also want some protein in your diet throughout your stay. Luckily, along with the snakes trapped on the island, there are also cockroaches. These giant prehistoric-looking roaches come out at night to feed on plants. Get that barbecue started and enjoy the rare delicacy this island provides. A great way to survive on the island is to avoid it altogether. If by chance you happen to be sailing past, keep in mind that this place was once connected to the mainland. Rocks beneath the waves are very likely to damage the bottom of your boat if you get too close. Make sure you keep an appropriate distance when traveling past. Sure, this island is intriguing, but please remember that no matter how close you get to it, you won't be able to see snakes from the boat. You can only see these creatures if you get close enough, which you really shouldn't do. And it's not only reptiles that make this location dangerous. Pirates visit the island quite often. Not the sea shanty singing peg-legged arr pirates, but bio-pirates who come there to capture the very thing that makes it so dangerous. They come there for snakes, to catch them and sell them illegally. Since the island got cut off around 11,000 years ago, the golden lancehead has evolved within its own unique habitat. So, although there are many reptiles on this island, they're still an endangered species. Due to their limited numbers, their value is very high, reaching up to $30,000 on illegal markets, which gives biopirates the motivation to catch them. I can think of better ways to make a living. Anyway, let's say you've got all the resources necessary to survive in one of the most dangerous places on Earth. Do you think you would manage this feat? Perhaps you think it's impossible. You'd be surprised at how possible it can be, if you know what you're doing. It turns out many have visited this scary place before. Research teams often come there. They study the golden lancehead snake, its environment, and its food sources for conservation purposes. But scientists always make sure there's a doctor on the team. There's also a lighthouse on Snake Island. It had been operated by people until the 1920s. Then it became automated. One guess why. Brazilian authorities visit the lighthouse once a year to make sure it's still functional. Locals on the mainland know the reputation of the island, so the stories of people going missing are minimal. But one group of fishers once got too close to the island. As they were sailing along their normal route, they accidentally neared the shore. Their boat hit a rock under the waves and began filling with water. As the boat was quickly sinking, the men had only two options: to try to survive in the rough sea or swim to the shores of Snake Island. It was a hard choice to make. After all, they had heard the stories, and it wasn't just about snakes. Rumor had it that the island was cursed. Regardless of the stories, the fishers chose to take their chances with Snake Island. After making it to the shore, they tried to be careful. Their knowledge of the island could help them survive. Most importantly, they knew to avoid the rainforest at all costs. As the men got hungry, they carefully walked along the edge of the forest, warily collecting bananas. They were mostly sitting, waiting, and conserving their energy. They could only drink water when it rained. It was just enough to sustain them. They slept on the beach, unprotected from the elements and weather. And all the time, they were so close to the comfort of the lighthouse or caves. They were probably overly cautious, but it was either enduring some discomfort or risking their lives for a dry bed. They didn't yield to the temptation. They managed to survive for 3 days without being bitten by a snake. After that, a passing boat finally rescued them. So, now you know, anything is possible.
A strange lake appeared in India 52,000 years ago. It was formed here literally out of nowhere. I recall it was a Wednesday. Anyway, for tens of thousands of years, people came up with various scary stories about the lake. Some locals believe this place was cursed. Others think that the lake's bottom hides the gateway to the underworld. But those are all legends. The real reason for the appearance of this Lonar Lake is even more surprising. At first, scientists were sure that the lake was an ancient crater of a long-extinct volcano. It's in a balsam field made of 65-million-year-old volcanic rock. But then, geologists conducted a detailed analysis of the soil and water and found that Lonar Lake had a space origin. Geologists found a unique glass inside the lake that forms only with a strong impact and energy release. 52,000 years ago, a huge meteorite weighing 2 million tons fell into this place. It was almost 6 times heavier than the Empire State Building. The striking power was so high that the volcanic rock melted and turned into glass. Perhaps the bottom of this lake still contains particles of this giant meteorite that flew to us from the distant space depths. Okay, we have a lake created by a space object more than 50,000 years ago. But even this is not the strangest thing about it. In 2020, the locals noticed that Lonar Lake had turned pink. In just a few days, the salt water mysteriously changed its color. Biologists and geologists immediately took water samples to the Scientific Research Center. The detailed analysis showed that the water contained an increased level of unique microbes. They accumulate on the surface and emit some pink pigment. Soon these microbes settled to the bottom, and the lake became transparent again. Also, rains help the water go back to its usual appearance. These microbes color the lake and make the pink plumage of flamingos even brighter. The birds get food from the Lonar Lake and absorb these pink bacteria. Now, Lonar Lake is a popular place among tourists, but this is not the only thing that may surprise you in India. Our next stop is a small village with about 2,600 people located in a hot rainforest. The locals are very hospitable. They welcome not only tourists, but also one of the most venomous reptiles on the planet. King cobras are crawling in almost every house in this village. Locals are happy to see them as if they were their pets. People share water and food with these animals. They even give the reptiles a special corner where they can relax from the scorching sun. Ah, cobras crawl in houses, schools, and even on the streets. Humans and reptiles are used to each other and feel safe. There has never been a case of a cobra attack in the village. It's the only place in the world where these venomous reptiles live in such harmony with people. Now, imagine a town that consists of many little united villages. The residents are all engaged in agriculture. They know how to extract water from ground rocks, and they bargain well. The town has been thriving for several centuries, and people live happily in it. Then, one day, everything changes. All the residents quickly pack up their stuff and run away from their homes. Overnight, the town becomes abandoned. It is a real story that happened in the state of Rajasthan in 1825. And still, no one knows why the people disappeared from there. The most popular version says that the cruel local ruler collected large taxes from the locals. Then he fell in love with the daughter of the chief of this town and threatened that he would collect extra taxes if the girl refused to be his wife. Citizens decided to support the woman and her father and left their homes in one day. This town is still empty, but the locals from the nearest cities are afraid to approach. Our next stop is the state of Maharashtra. There's a small village there with very positive people. They go to stores, cafes, schools, and banks. Everything here seems quite ordinary, and you wouldn't notice what's so special about this place. But just wait for the night to come. People go to sleep and no one locks their houses. There are no locks at all in this village. The door of any building is always open here. The owners leave the shops, cafes, and libraries open. When locals go to work, they don't lock up their homes either. They don't hide money and jewelry. The reason for this is the complete absence of thefts. The villagers are sure that anyone can get into serious trouble for stealing. According to a legend, about 300 years ago, after prolonged rains and floods, a large black stone slab appeared in the center of the village. This slab symbolized an Indian mythical creature that watched over the locals. At some point, people stopped locking their houses because they knew that no one would dare to commit theft in that creature's face. In 2015, a police station was opened here, but almost no one has reported an incident since then. The building doesn't even have doors because the police don't keep anyone there. Another fantastic place in India is a village in the state of Assam. Hundreds of locals prepare here for an unusual celebration every now and then. They arrange a magnificent wedding ceremony. They set the table, dress up in beautiful costumes, and bring gifts. And all this for the newlyweds. But instead of people, frogs get married here. Locals hold weddings for wild frogs to summon rain. The incredible thing is that the ceremony looks just like a real wedding. The fun can last all day until late at night. Now, there's one dangerous and inaccessible island in India. You can find it in the Bay of Bengal. It's called the North Sentinel. It's a small piece of land that looks like a tropical paradise. But you won't be able to get there. Since 1956, nobody can travel to this place. The Coast Guard is always sailing around and patrolling the area. The reason for this is the local Sentinelese tribe. This tribe lives isolated from the whole world. They don't know about modern technologies, the internet, or television. For centuries, the Sentinelese have lived on their own, away from civilization. And the people from India want to keep it that way. Anyone who approaches their island is welcomed by the tribe with a flurry of spears and arrows. And it doesn't matter if you're coming by boat or helicopter. Another reason why you can't get on the island is the Sentinelese immune system. The Coast Guard is trying to protect the local tribe from possible diseases and infections that outsiders can bring with them. The locals have no immunity from the flu or even a simple cold. They don't know what that is. Also, there are coral reefs and limestone around the island, which significantly complicates the passage of large ships. Despite all the prohibitions, many people tried to get to the island. In 1880, one officer accidentally discovered this island. He went ashore and found a noble soil ideal for growing coconut palms. The officer also noticed several huts on the island, but didn't dare meet the locals. Explorers and travelers presented the islanders with fish as a gift many times. The locals accepted it, asked for more, but still didn't let them approach their houses. It was also challenging to make friends with the tribe because they communicate in one of the most difficult languages to learn in the world. Scientists and linguists have been studying this language for decades. At the end of the 20th century, outsiders made some progress in building a connection with the tribe. In 1991, a team of anthropologists invited the islanders aboard a large ship. They gave bags of coconuts to tribe members. This may be where the phrase "left holding the bag" came from. Or not. Otherwise, let's just leave these folks alone, shall we? Wow, talk about noisy! Toadfish have a unique ability. They can create a very strong sound. The human ear usually can't hear it, especially if only one fish is making the sound. But if many fish are making the sound at the same time, well, it's going to be hard to forget, and you may not be able to stop hearing it. Toadfish are a common part of the fauna off the coast of Sausalito in California, and every year thousands of them gather in the shoals to party and scream. Together, they create a collective sound that can be easily heard by those in the houses near the shore. The noise, which can be described as a low hum, can even penetrate into the city center. Some people get bothered by this constant humming. This is a unique natural phenomenon, but there's a catch. At some point, the fish swim away from the shore, but the sound remains. Also, scientists have proven that this fish-made noise can't spread through the city, and many residents of the coastal areas don't hear it. But still, some people continue to hear this strange hum. In a similar case, imagine that you've moved to a small village in Scotland. You rent a house, have dinner, and go to bed. As you're settling into sleep, a strange hum permeates your room. It sounds like someone started their truck somewhere in the distance. The sound is similar to the sound of a low, loud bass that comes from a speaker. The hum keeps you awake. You get migraines and even feel nauseous. In the morning, you find out that some other locals also hear this terrible buzzing. They tell you about a huge factory located nearby. Machines, engines, steam boilers, big air vents, and generators emit a loud, heavy hum that passes through the air. Sound waves spread throughout the village and annoy people with a sharp sense of hearing. You've been hearing this sound for several days and suffering from insomnia. Then, one day, the factory goes bankrupt. All the workers leave their positions and turn off all the engines and fans. Great, you'll finally sleep in peace. But you know what? The sound doesn't disappear. It follows you wherever you are. And it's not about the factory or the fish or the truck engine. Imagine that you're walking down the streets of a small English town. There are a lot of planes flying right above you. The hum they make follows you. Even in bed you can hear it. You wonder if there's an airport nearby. You ask the locals and find out there's not even a runway here. But where does the sound come from? You raise your head to look up and see a clear sky. There are no planes, but there's noise, and you're not the only one who hears it. Some locals are sure that the hum comes from high-speed traffic on the highway. Thousands of cars drive in two directions and leave massive sound waves behind. But at night, there are no cars there, and the sound remains. Maybe you're going mad. People's stories about the hum save you from this madness, and it's not just the residents of this town that know about it. About 4% of people on the planet hear the hum. Strangers tell each other about the hum that prevents them from sleeping and concentrating on something. The sound follows them everywhere and doesn't stop. Some people hear it in certain places, so they move to other cities. Maybe you're hearing it right now and not paying attention. But be careful. If you recognize it once, you won't be able to stop hearing it. There's a website and a forum on the internet dedicated to the hum. People from all over the world put geolocations in places where they heard this mysterious phenomenon. You can find thousands of these coordinates on the site and even add your own. People describe different levels of noise and share their sources. Some theories say that the hum is the sound of our planet, coming from the core. Someone else is sure that it comes from the atmosphere. Scientists have even been consulted, but they also don't know the reason for this phenomenon. People use high-frequency microphones and amplifiers to record the hum. Almost everywhere, they detect a low-frequency vibration that is practically impossible for the human ear to catch. It mixes with the sound of cars, printers in the office, and subway trains. Sometimes people stop hearing it, but the hum increases when they lie in bed. Many records about the hum say that people hear it in industrial cities. Sometimes these sound seekers manage to find the source. They ended up being factories with running generators where the sound was getting into the ventilation system and where the fans spread it outside the building. When the generator stopped working, the sound disappeared. But these are rare cases. More often, no one can find the source of hum. One of the most famous places where you can catch it is in the city of Taos in New Mexico. About 2% of locals hear a strange buzzing every day. Some tourists experience it too. Scientists came to the city to study this mystery, but found no explanation. Some theories say the usual acoustics of this place cause the hum. Some folks think it's just a hallucination or the power of suggestion. Everyone talks so much about the hum that the brain creates an illusion of a sound that doesn't exist. Locals believe the nature of the buzzing is mystical and associated with bad spirits. Whatever it is, no one has found out the truth yet. The hum that people hear all over the world may be the result of seismic activity in the tectonic plates under the ocean waters. Huge chunks of the Earth's crust are slowly moving and colliding with each other. This creates a noise that reaches us in the form of a hum. But why do only a few people hear it? Perhaps about 4% of the world's population has a unique sense of hearing. In any case, scientists haven't been able to confirm the tectonic plate theory either. Some researchers point to submarines as the reason. They use low-frequency radio signals to communicate around the world. These signals spread over the surface and can affect the human body. When the ear catches these sound waves, it reacts and causes vibrations similar to humming. This happens because low-frequency sound energy collides with the soft tissues of the skull and stimulates the auditory nerve. In fact, it's not even a sound. It's a hallucination that is created by your brain. But still, no one can confirm this theory either. Perhaps thunderstorms can create the hum phenomenon. About 8 million lightning strikes hit the Earth every day. Some impact creates a powerful electromagnetic charge. Lightning penetrates the air and makes it resonate between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere. Yeah, it sounds complicated, but the principle is simple. Imagine that you're blowing onto the neck of a bottle. Hear this low hum? Lightning works similarly with air. And that's just one hit. Imagine millions of these strikes. The sound waves spread all over the planet, and some people hear them. Lightning constantly strikes all the time, so the hum never stops. In 1973, scientists put forward a theory that the reason for the hum is the jet stream shearing against slower-moving air. In simple words, wind and fast airflows intersect slower ones. As a result, a whistling sound appears, and electric towers and power lines amplify it. By the way, the first reports of the hum appeared in the 70s. People learned about this phenomenon from the small British city of Bristol. Dozens of residents heard this strange noise in different parts of the town. In the beginning, they ignored it. Then the sound became increasingly more irritable. It prevented people from working and living their everyday lives. They couldn't sleep and couldn't concentrate on anything. There was a warehouse with industrial fans in a neighboring town. The locals were sure that this was the reason for the hum. The warehouse stopped working a few years later, but the sound remained. You may even be able to hear it right now if you visit the city. There are many theories about the hum, but you can reduce almost half of them thanks to one factor. Tectonic plates, seismic activity, lightning strikes, the Earth's crust, and resonating air are logical explanations. But look at all the records about the noise. People hadn't mentioned this until the 70s. If this phenomenon had appeared earlier, many newspapers would have written about it. Apparently, the hum is not a mystery of nature. Perhaps this is a consequence of all of our technological achievements. Factories, power lines, airplanes, cars, ships, trains, microwaves, and generators create an imperceptible background noise that most people ignore. We're so used to all these noises that we have forgotten what silence is. Perhaps our brain made the hum inside our heads to respond to our noisy world. If you start to listen carefully right now, what kind of sounds will you hear? Where are they coming from? And is there the hum among them?
Imagine you're surfing a perfect wave, and then it suddenly freezes. Well, it sure sounds creepy, but couldn't possibly happen in real life, right? Wrong. You can see mind-blowing frozen waves in Antarctica. These waves occur when the ice gets compressed and the ever-increasing pressure squeezes the air bubbles out. As for the beautiful blue color, it's the result of ice melting and refreezing. When the summer begins, an ordinary-looking river in Colombia transforms into a liquid rainbow. Caño Cristales, also known as the most beautiful river in the world, sparkles in 5 colors: red, black, green, blue, and yellow. It only looks like this for 6 months of the year because the aquatic plant that gives it the bright hues needs the right water level and amount of sunshine to use its magic. Australia is home to a unique horizontal waterfall on the coast of the Kimberley region. It's really just a fast tidal flow moving through 2 narrow-aligned rocks. The tides can rise 30 feet. The falls reverse whenever the tide changes. Also down under is the biggest single rock in the world. It's so big that it even looks like a large hill. It has a circumference of 6 miles and is 1,150 feet high. The edges are eroded since the rock has been around forever. These mud brick buildings are 7 stories high and were built out of fertile soil, hay, and water that were made into bricks and left to bake under the sun for days. The ground floors were used for keeping livestock and grains, and the upper levels were places for socializing and catching good views. Antelope Canyon in Arizona, also known as the place where water runs through rock, has 2 sections of slotted canyons. Throughout the years, the water running through sandstone has created a picturesque formation like no other. If you ever set foot on the arid soil of the Namib Desert in Namibia, prepare yourself for an eerie picture. You'll see countless circular patches between 6 feet to 50 feet in diameter. Organized in a honeycomb-like pattern, they stretch across 1,500 miles toward the horizon. These patches are also known as fairy circles, and you might be disappointed by the explanation of this mystery. No one knows for sure the origin of these circles, even though there are numerous theories, from the radioactivity of the soil to the activity of sand termites. Mount Haleakala in Hawaii is one of the quietest places in the world. National park managers nearly failed to find any sounds to measure here. The place translates from Hawaiian as House of the Sun. It formed thanks to a volcano that got active 1 million years ago. The lava flows built up over the years and grew into a mountain. It has its own climate and weather that's impossible to predict. It takes almost a week by ship from South Africa to to travel to the world's most isolated settlement of Edinburgh of the Seven Seas. You'd need special permission from the local government to visit as a tourist. About 300 locals all treat each other as family, grow their own food, and keep their island impeccably clean. Daintree Forest in Australia is the oldest rainforest in the world. It has been around for over 100 million years. Daintree is home to some unique animal species, 12,000 different types of insects, and about half of Australia's frog, butterfly, and bat population. The rainforest also has around 3,000 types of plant species. Rocks that travel are called sailing stones because they seem to move across the dry lake bed of Racetrack Playa in Death Valley National Park, California. As the rocks move, they leave behind a creepy trail that used to have scientists baffled. After all, some of the boulders weigh more than 660 pounds. On top of that, some of the trails are curved, while others are mostly straight, with unexpected turns to the right or the left. But eventually, NASA experts cracked the mystery in 2006. It turns out that in winter, the lake fills with water, covering the boulders at the bottom in ice. And since ice is pretty buoyant, underwater movements and winds make the stones move across the lake bed. In their wake, they leave bizarre tracks, only seen when the water evaporates in the summer. Lake Maracaibo in Venezuela is often called the lightning capital of the world. Thunderstorms arise here 300 days of the year, with a peak in September. Sometimes there are up to 200 flashes in a minute. It happens because cool air coming from the surrounding Andes meets with warm air from the Caribbean Sea and generates electricity. Some places on Earth have less gravity than others. Canada's Hudson Bay, for example, used to be covered by a super thick and heavy glacier during the last ice age. The ice had pushed tons of rock mass outward when it started to melt. The smaller the mass of an object, the less gravity it has. It'll take another 5,000 years for the Earth to get into its original shape in this spot. Until then, you'll always weigh less here than anywhere else in the world. Five Flower Lake in China's Zhoujiago Valley changes its color from amber yellow to emerald green, dark jade to light turquoise, and sometimes coral. It never freezes thanks to underwater hot springs and never melts or dries up, unlike other neighboring lakes. The locals believe it's made up of pieces of a mirror that fell down from the sky. The surrounding valley has some narrow conic karst landforms, spectacular waterfalls, around 140 bird species, and giant panda, along with other endangered plant and animal species. Cape Denison in the Commonwealth Bay in Antarctica is the windiest place on the planet. It has unusual downslope winds. They are formed because of the continent's dome shape and the always cold climate. These winds are so fast and strong, they ruin the measuring instruments and the masts they are attached to. The record speed so far was 200 miles per hour. The Sahara Desert, which takes up 10% of the African continent, is extremely hot and dry. That's why it's one of the top places with the clearest skies. There's hardly ever a cloud above it. This, plus the remoteness from any civilization, makes it one of the best spots for stargazing. In Denmark, people experience blackout-type effects on a pretty regular basis. Just look how weird it is. But it gets even more bizarre when you find out that birds are the cause of this unusual phenomenon. Every spring and fall, millions of starlings begin their annual migration from Sweden, Finland, and Norway toward Britain, Belgium, and France. Denmark is the lucky place where you can observe Sort Sol, the Danish name for black sun. The birds travel in large flocks, which makes it easier to exchange information and stay warm. Before the birds land, they perform movements that look like dancing, but in fact, they are making different formations in an attempt to shoo predators away. And although the birds fly in highly synchronized patterns, people think that the huge flock changes its shape chaotically. The dark sun lasts only 20 minutes during sunset, and you have to be either fast or lucky to see this phenomenon. The secret of the cotton candy color of Pink Sand Beach in Barbuda is the crushed corals on it and tiny single-celled red organisms living beneath them. You can see that famous shade when the waves are strong enough to wash that mix ashore. The secret of impeccable cleanliness of this place is that it has no public facilities and is less crowded than other Caribbean islands. It took thousands of years to form Picaninny Ponds in Australia. This whole time, underground freshwater was slowly moving to the surface through limestone. It formed a large underwater cavern with white limestone walls. You'd need a special permit to dive here, and it's definitely worth it. Batara Gorge Waterfall has 3 natural bridges for anyone to walk across, take awesome pictures, and even have picnics. The waterfall is a result of limestone erosion that's been going on for millions of years, even though it looks like someone punched a hole right in the middle. It's located in the village of Tanarine, which is just 2 hours away from the capital Beirut. A village in the Meghalaya state in India is known as the wettest on the planet, according to the Guinness World Records. The average annual rainfall here is about 470 inches. It's a result of warm, moist monsoon winds coming from the Bay of Bengal, bringing clouds full of rain. It flows into rivers and waterfalls and never stops. The locals that work in the fields always wear basket-like covers to protect themselves somehow. The village of Leknes, with a population of about 3,500, is located in Norway, above the Arctic Circle. It has an unusually warm climate compared to other places in the same latitude. In January, the average minimum is 32 degrees Fahrenheit and rarely drops below 30 degrees Fahrenheit. July average temperature is 53 degrees Fahrenheit. That's pretty regular for many places in Europe.
Oh, gravity, you heartless so-and-so. Well, that's what I think when I trip over a stone and fall face down. Of course, I'm not clumsy, you know. Anyway, gravity is a constant, right? Something entirely unshakable that we can always rely on in this ever-changing world. Unlike, love. Feeling romantic, sorry. But what if I told you that it's not as honest and clear as you think? There are places on our planet where gravity behaves like it's gone crazy. And that's why you clicked here. So let's take a look. Magnetic Hill in Leh, India. There's a stretch of road in India that's been attracting tourists from all over the world. It's no different looking from the surrounding landscape, and you could easily pass it by without noticing, if not for one very unusual and a bit creepy thing. If you stop your car on the magnetic hill going up the slope and put it on neutral, it'll start crawling upwards, eventually reaching the speed of up to 12 miles per hour. They say there's some sort of magnetic force at work here that tugs cars up the hill, hence the name. On top of that, even airplanes are said to gain altitude above this place. Skeptics offer another explanation, though. It's just the lay of the land that creates an illusion of going upwards, while in fact you're moving down the hill and vice versa. Whatever the truth, I'd like to see it for myself. Would you? Tell me down in the comments. The Crooked Forest, Poland. Near the village of Nowa Czarnowo, there's a forest in the depth of which you can find a strangely looking pine tree. Planted in the 1930s, there are 400 trees that sharply twist to the north almost at the roots, and then grow upwards in a semicircle. Although scientists offer different theories about the tree's weird growth, nobody can say for sure what made them look like that. Some say it's people who did it, while others believe it's a gravitational anomaly that somehow pushed the trees down. The trouble with this version, though, is that it would have had to stay there for years, and that only affected the trees. Still, no certain explanation exists anyways, so who knows? A waterfall, Faroe Islands. Ever seen an upward-moving waterfall? You can have a look at one on the Faroe Islands, halfway from Iceland to Scotland. But if you were expecting me to tell you an unbelievable story about a mysterious force pushing the water up the rock, then sorry, no such thing here. The truth, however, is quite jaw-dropping anyway. The winds in this place are so powerful that they lift the water and throw it back up. I guess it was this kind of wind that allowed Mary Poppins to travel on her umbrella. Sounds good. In fact, this waterfall is not unique. There are several more places on Earth where winds create an illusion of defied gravity. For example, there's the Kinder River in England that has a waterfall constantly struggling with the wind. It's so strong that half of the Cascades water seems to just fly up without ever touching the bottom of the drop. Hoover Dam in Nevada, USA. If you ever get up to the top of the dam, which is about 726 feet high, you can try a little trick. Take a bottle of water and pour it over the edge. You'll see the water flow up instead of spilling down. Once again, this isn't really any magic or unnatural phenomenon. The wind up here is simply too strong for the water to fall, just like with the waterfall on the Faroe Islands. Here though, it looks even more impressive since you can do it yourself. Dokkaebi Road, South Korea. Another gravitational anomaly located on a road. Locals once found out that if you put an empty can or a bottle on the ground, it will immediately start rolling uphill. Unlike other such places in the world though, Dokkaebi Road doesn't just create an illusion. When you walk down the slope, you don't feel as if you're going up. Everything's pretty normal. But once you put down an object that can roll, it will do that in the opposite direction than it should. Local authorities were quick to get the idea and put a signpost directing curious tourists to the mysterious road. Golden Rock, Burma. If you happen to be in Burma, these days it's also called Myanmar, make sure to visit this well-known site. A gold leaf-covered boulder sits upon the edge of a cliff, and a small pagoda is built on top of it. The impressive thing about the rock is that it only lightly touches the cliff for support. In fact, it looks like the boulder will fall any minute now, but it has been standing like that for centuries. On top of that, the pagoda built upon it is not really a recent addition, so it's quite an unusual sight to see. The rock seems to be saying, "Gravity? I don't care about that stuff." The legend has it that what keeps the boulder in place is a single strand of Buddha's hair. Well, I don't know about that, but you can check out the rock for yourself and see that it's not attached to the cliff by anything. And yet, it's not budged for 2,500 years. Something must be at work here, huh? Stone of Davasco, Argentina. If there ever was a thing that said, "I defy gravity" out loud, it's the Stone of Davasco. The huge 300-ton boulder stands precariously on the edge of a cliff and rocks a little bit from side to side in the wind. People even checked it by putting glass bottles under one of its edges. They exploded with another movement of the rock. Unfortunately, today you can't see this wonder of nature as it was a century ago. In 1912, the boulder suddenly dropped from its perch, which it had occupied for literally hundreds of years. The people in the nearby town of Tandil were so sad about this event that 95 years later, in 2007, they decided to restore the stone. Well, not exactly put it together chip by chip. They made a plastic replica of the rock and put it on the same spot and even in the same position. So even today, coming by Tandil, you can see its famous balancing boulder. More of a symbol now, of course, because it's no longer rocking and only weighs 9 tons, but instantly recognizable nonetheless. Devil's Tower in Wyoming, USA. Remember this place from the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind? If not, you should go watch it, but not right now. This place doesn't make you feel like you're witnessing some magic and doesn't really trick gravity right before your eyes. Sounds almost boring compared with the rest of the sites on my list, right? But the true mind-blowing feature of Devil's Tower is that scientists can't explain how it came to existence in the first place. You see, it's an 867-foot rock formation with walls so steep they're basically vertical. But that isn't even the main thing. This piece of stone just rose amid rolling plains of Wyoming with nothing like it for miles and miles around. So how is it that such a flat landscape could have suddenly given birth to something so tall? Theories abound, but nobody has the answer yet. My theory? Well, perhaps here is where the Earth has a giant outie belly button. Well then, you come up with a better theory. Oregon Vortex, USA. The House of Mystery in Gold Hill, Oregon amazes its visitors with gravity-defying effects. You can't stand straight there, always leaning to the side and having to hold on to something for balance. Balls roll upwards. And there's also a broom that stands perfectly still wherever you put it, unlike virtually everything else in this shack. The local Native American tribes called this place the Forbidden Ground, even before the house was built there, and they avoided approaching it. The owners of the shack, though, decided to turn it into an attraction, and they succeeded. They created an atmosphere of mystery around the place and spread the news about it in newspapers and later on the internet. And voila, a perfect anomaly is made. In fact, it's no more than a curiosity, a human-made optical illusion that tricks your eyes and other senses. Hudson Bay, Canada. Okay, we've talked about some pretty ambiguous stuff. But now it's time for the real deal, the Hudson Bay anomaly. This is probably the only place in the world where gravity is indeed lower than anywhere else on the planet. Even skeptics can't smirk at it because the difference has been measured with precision equipment. So, does it mean that the gravity here is as low as, say, on the moon then? Unfortunately, or is it luckily, I'm not sure yet, the difference is minuscule. The exact value is 0.005% or 1/200%. You won't be able to feel it even if you try your hardest, but it's still there. Scientists say this anomaly exists because of the ice sheet that covered the area about 10,000 years ago. It compressed the rocks so much that they still can't fully recover, shifting the gravitational field in Hudson Bay. Sometime in the future, though, the gravity will return to normal in this area as well. No moonwalk for me then.
Right now, as I speak from the United States, it is the year 2022. You're likely watching in the same year, unless this video has now been up for 2 years, in which case, it's 2024. If so, hello from the past. But what if you're watching from the year 111? Or 4720? Am I talking to you from the future or the past? I'm confused. For example, if you're in China in 2022, it is the year 4720. And similarly, if in North Korea, it's the year 111. Not all countries have the same calendar. Most of the world uses the Gregorian calendar. It was established in the 16th century and replaced the Julian calendar. Let's do a speedy aerial trip around the world and visit some countries that are in different year zones. We power through the atmosphere. Where shall we stop? Let's start with one of the world's most populous nations, China. Okay, hang back a bit so we can see the surrounding countries too, as some use the Chinese calendar as well. Countries such as Mongolia, South Korea, and Vietnam. According to the Chinese lunar year calendar, the current year, as of February 2022, is actually the year 4720, thousands of years into the future. But not really. The chronology starts from the date Emperor Wang Di started his reign in 2637 BCE. The calendar is cyclic and is based on the astronomical cycles of Jupiter. Within 60 years, Jupiter goes around the Sun 5 times, and those are the 5 elements of the Chinese calendar. One circle of Jupiter around the Sun takes 12 years. These years receive their names from animals. 2022, on the Gregorian calendar, is the year of the tiger. It's not only dates that are measured differently. People's ages are also complex. The chronology starts from 1, not 0. A newborn is 1 year old from birth. Their age increases with the coming of a new year, but not with their birth date. That means that all family members gathering together on New Year's become 1 year older with the passing of the New Year clock. That's why the age of an Asian person can be 2 years different from the age of a European person, even if they were born on the same day. Let's go up again. We may as well stay in the area. Let's move south. Yes, to North Korea. There, they use the Juche calendar. It has been used since July 8, 1997, together with the Gregorian calendar. The Juche calendar begins with the birth of Kim Il-sung, the founder of North Korea, and the eternal president of the country. His birth year, 1912, became Juche 1 in the Juche calendar. The calendar was adopted 3 years after the passing of Kim Il-sung. His year of birth is called Year 1. There is no Year 0 on this calendar. This makes the year 2022 Year 111 in North Korea. When writing dates, both calendars are used. Let's fly up again into the atmosphere and travel west, not too far away, to the populous country of India. The calendar of India was created in 1957. It's based on the Saka era, the ancient system of chronology that is widely used in India and Cambodia. It's also used in Java and Bali. There are also other calendars in India used by different nations and tribes. Some start the chronology from Krishna's date of passing, 3102 BCE. Others date it from 1957, specifically March 22, 1957, or Kshetra 1, 1879 in the Saka era. Its year 0 corresponds to the year 78 in the Julian calendar. In 1957, India decided to bring all of the calendars in use into one to create a type of uniformity for the country. There were 30 different calendars to consider. The Gregorian calendar is the most widely used. Time to leave India and head west again and across to Saudi Arabia. Here, the chronology starts from Hijra, in the first emigration to Medina, 622 CE. The day here starts at sunset, not at midnight. The beginning of a month is the day when the crescent moon first appears after the new moon. A year is 10 to 11 days shorter than the solar year. Months move in relation to seasons. Those months that were in summer will take place in winter after some time, and vice versa. So what year is it in Saudi Arabia? In 2022, the year there is 1443. Let's go across again and narrow in on Iran. Here, things work a little differently, as they do in Afghanistan too. They use the solar Hijri calendar. It is also known as the Persian or Iranian calendar. It's considered one of the most accurate calendars in the world. Unlike the Gregorian calendar, which follows a set of certain rules to stay in sync with the solar year, the solar Hijri calendar is based on astronomical observations. The year begins at midnight, closest to the vernal equinox in Iran. It's when the daytime and nighttime are equal in length. The first day of the new year is called Nowruz. Let's leave Iran now and head over to Israel, a tiny country in comparison. Here, they have their own calendar, but like many other places, they use it along with the Gregorian one. The start of a new day begins precisely when the sun goes below the horizon, meaning at sunset. This explains why their holiday begins the evening before the first actual day of it. The year count began on October 7, 3761 BCE. This puts the time currently in the 6th millennium, specifically year 5782. The practice was implemented in the 12th century when a philosopher, Maimonides, established the time frame as the date of creation. Whipping over to Japan now, where there are also two existing calendars, the more traditional one based on the years of the Japanese emperor's reigns. Every emperor gives his period a name, the motto of his reign. From the year 1989, there had been an era of peace and tranquility. The throne belonged to Emperor Akihito. The present era, Reiwa, formally began on May 1, 2019, when Emperor Akihito's elder son, Naruhito, ascended the throne as the 126th Emperor of Japan. Officially, 2022 corresponds to Reiwa 4. Popping across to Thailand now. Here, 2022 is the year 2565. Officially, Thailand lives according to the lunar calendar, in which the chronology starts from a traditional but significant cultural event. Still, they use the Gregorian calendar as well. Exceptions are often made for visitors from other countries, and the dates on goods and documents are written according to this calendar. This particular calendar is also used in Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. Heading across to Africa, and specifically Ethiopia, where their calendar is 8 years behind the Gregorian one. It also has 13 months in a year. 12 months have 30 days, and the last one is very short, just 5 or 6 days depending on whether it is a leap year or not. Also, Their day doesn't begin at midnight, but at sunrise. The Ethiopian calendar is based on the ancient calendar of Alexandria, which means they're in the year 2014 during 2022. Let's take a closer look at the Gregorian calendar, as it's the most widely used. It was based closely on the Julian calendar, which was created in 46 BC by Julius Caesar. The previous Roman calendar was very complicated, based on various lunar phases. The Julian calendar was designed with Greek mathematicians and astronomers. It comprised a normal year of 365 days and a leap year, with one extra day every fourth year. This makes it 1/100th of a day longer than the actual solar year. Thus, for any day from 1901 to 2099, the Julian date is 13 days behind the Gregorian one. In other words, whatever day it is when you're watching this video, subtract 13 days and that's the Julian date. The official switch to the Gregorian calendar took place in October 1582 by Pope Gregory XIII, hence the name Gregorian. But even this calendar might be a bit off. According to modern research, scientists say that the events the Gregorian calendar starts its year count with may have happened 4 years earlier. So maybe I'm really speaking to you now from year 2018, not 2022. Have a headache yet? So, wherever you are in the world, if you happen to be talking to an online friend, be careful what you really mean when you say, "Let's catch up next year." You could be waiting for a very long time.
There are places on Earth over which planes can't fly. They are restricted airspace zones you can't enter for security or secrecy reasons. There are 5 types of protected zones: areas of cultural, political, historical, and environmental significance, and areas that are protected to ensure visitors' safety. Let's have a look at the most famous of them. Firstly, it's Washington, D.C. and the White House. It's a very protected zone. No one can fly over it if they're less than 18,000 feet above sea level. There's an airport close to the White House, and the restrictions cause a lot of trouble for pilots and passengers. Pilots have to maneuver very carefully so that they don't accidentally enter the restricted zone, because the consequences are quite severe. Passengers usually don't have a very pleasant time at the beginning of their flight, all because of the maneuvers pilots have to perform, trying to avoid entering the protected zone. Once, in 2005, a pilot accidentally veered into this zone, and just because of it, the capital was evacuated. They don't take any chances. If there's someone or something in the protected airspace, it's assumed to be dangerous by default. Next up is Camp David. It was built back in 1938 in the countryside of Maryland. Originally, the camp was called High Catacton. Built in 1953, the USA's 34th President Dwight D. Eisenhower named it Camp David, in honor of his father and grandson. Camp David is the US President's country residence. It is also used to host the representatives of foreign countries. Since there are so many important people staying in this place, there is a 3-mile no-fly zone around it and a 5-mile above sea level no-fly zone over it. The next place is also important to one of the former American presidents. The Bush family compound is the summer residence of George Bush's family in Maine. The family still visits there often, so you can't fly over this place if the altitude is lower than 1,000 feet above sea level. Another no-fly zone is the Kennedy Space Center. No one can travel over it if they're flying less than 5,000 feet above sea level. This place is so protected because of NASA's activities on and around the island. The next place is located here, in northern Minnesota, at the border with Canada. This is a wilderness zone called the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. It's a national recreation area and the most visited wilderness area in the United States, where many people go hiking, fishing, and canoeing. The protection of this beautiful natural spot started in 1902. In 1949, the airspace over the entire region within 4,000 feet above sea level became protected too. Motorboats and snowmobiles are also prohibited there, all to protect the natural beauty and the wilderness of the place. Another place on my list is, you'd never guess it, Disneyland.
and Disney World. Since Disneyland's airspace has the protection level of the White House and the Kennedy Space Center, it's prohibited to fly over the theme park without a special waiver, and the restriction goes 3,000 feet above sea level. The law was introduced in 2003 to ensure the safety of the park and its visitors. These days, you'll never see a plane or even a single drone flying over the place, unless they've got a special permission waiver. Now, let's go global. It's not only the United States that has such bans. There are many more protected places like the ones I've already mentioned around the world. Let's start with this huge hole in the Earth's surface. It has a diameter of 3,900 feet. It's greater than the height of the tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa. In fact, it's 1.5 Burj Khalifas, and it's also more than 1,700 feet deep, which means the pit could fit a 140-story building. The giant pit is a diamond mine located in Mirny, a town in Siberia. The average winter temperature here is negative 31 degrees Fahrenheit. You can't fly a helicopter over the mine because it's dangerous. The mine is so big that it messes up with the flow of air. The air within the mine is way warmer than it is outside. And when these two airflows mix, it creates a vortex. If a helicopter flies by, the vortex will likely pull it in. Then the machine will lose altitude and crash. Another place is Buckingham Palace. Flying over this building is banned to protect the monarchs. The palace isn't just a place where the Queen resides. It's also Great Britain's administrative headquarters, where many meetings with foreign representatives are held. Planes can't fly over Windsor Castle as well, because that's where the royal family resides. Peru has banned planes from flying over its famous landmark, Machu Picchu, in 2006. The ban was supposed to protect the landmark's heritage and its wildlife. Next up is India's Taj Mahal. The mausoleum, completed in 1653, is located in Agra, in the northern part of India. It's one of the most recognized places in the world, and it's protected by UNESCO as the World's Heritage Site. No wonder this place, which is visited by more than 6 million people every year, is so protected. The area has been a no-fly zone since 2006. This law was enacted to protect the building and the visitors. Even though there's no official prohibition, planes prefer to avoid particular regions on our planet. One of them is the Himalayas. The Himalayan mountains are higher than 20,000 feet, and with Mount Everest, the tallest point on Earth, reaching 29,032 feet. Most planes fly at about 30,000 feet, which is too close to the mountain peak. To maintain the minimum distance, planes would have to fly higher, which is impossible. Also, the winds are too strong over the mountains, and this makes it difficult to maneuver aircraft. Planes need routes with the possibility of emergency landings and with the best radar services, just in case something goes wrong during the flight. The problem is that there's almost no radar services in the Himalayas, and pilots wouldn't be able to communicate with air traffic controllers on the ground. An emergency landing is only possible on flat surfaces, and there are none of those in the Himalayan region. The risk is simply too high with mountains everywhere. If you don't think it's already dangerous enough, there's more. If something, for example cabin decompression, happens to an aircraft at such altitude, the plane will only have enough oxygen for around 20 minutes. When this oxygen runs out, the plane must descend to at least 10,000 feet above sea level to replenish its reserves. And that's impossible to do in the Himalayas because of the mountains all over the place. Another tough route goes over the poles. And to take that one, a plane needs special approval. The problem here is that the pole can mess up the aircraft's navigational system. Compasses there go totally wild and become of no use at all. Earth's North Pole has a very strong magnetic field that's constantly changing. If the magnetic field moves, the true north starts to differ from what pilots see on their devices. Then it gets difficult for them to find the correct runway. By the way, Runways are named according to how far away from the true North Pole they are. If the magnetic field moves and causes the pilot to adjust navigation, they can't be sure whether they're going to land on the correct runway. So, only several planes actually fly there, and they have to go through special preparations, get particular navigational devices, and an approval to travel there. And still, no one flies directly over the North Pole. Even though aircraft fly over oceans and smaller bodies of water, if there's an alternative route that goes over land, the plane will always opt for it. Interestingly, flying over water is usually smoother than flying over land, especially at lower altitudes. That's because there's less turbulence there. The main reason for turbulence is hot air rising from the ground. When you fly over water, you don't have this problem, and the flight is more comfortable. Still, flying over land is safer. I don't know about you, but I'd rather go through a bit of shaking than have no opportunity to land in case of emergency. Planes that make transoceanic flights usually have 4 engines. For 2-engine aircraft, it's too dangerous. They prefer routes where there are many airports on the way that can accept this particular type of aircraft in case of emergency. Imagine an engine failure happens. In this case, the aircraft will have to rely on the remaining engine to take the plane to the nearest airport and land safely. There aren't so many airports in, let's say, the Pacific Ocean.
Google launched its Google Maps service more than 15 years ago. Since then, curious users from all over the globe have been making exciting finds. For example, this band of holes in Peru. The band is about 1 mile long. It consists of more than 6,000 bizarre holes. All of them have different diameters and depths. This phenomenon has nothing in common with the more renowned NASA lines. The purpose of this place, as well as its creators, has remained a mystery since 1933. That's when an aviator published an aerial photo of the holes. At the moment, archaeologists can only make assumptions. The most plausible theory is that the holes were storage pits constructed at the times of the Inca Empire. Well, I don't know whether it's true or not, but this band of holes gives me the creeps. And how about this artificial island in the Netherlands? It's located in Kettlemeer Lake. The island looks exactly like a geological pin icon, but if you visit the place, you'll see that it's actually a depository that's no bigger than half a mile across. It's used to store polluted silt. And here's another island, nicknamed Kalesnjak, which means Lover's Island. This place lies in the Adriatic Sea between Italy and Croatia. The place is nothing more than an uninhabited piece of land, with no fresh water or any constructions, but the island's owners are trying to use the internet fame their property has gained over the years. These 2 long barren patches actually look like 2 scars going across the heart. But the reason for their appearance is way less romantic. Those are the marks left by bulldozers. The island owners want to plant olive trees to turn the place into a perfect wedding location. You can enjoy all the beauty of Dublin's Shamrock Maze only from the air. The place is located to the south of Dublin Airport and the side of the freeway. When you're flying to Ireland next time, keep an eye out for it. Because you won't be able to get to this place by land in any case. Google Street View shows that the road leading to the maze ends with a big metal gate. The sign on this gate warns you that it's private property guarded by dogs. If I were you, I wouldn't risk it. If you still want to find the way out of a maze, you should go to the UK. This giant fingerprint is called the Finger Maze. You can find it in the Hove Park in the city of Brighton and Hove. The maze is a public sculpture lined with stone and lime mortar. The environmental artist Chris Drury created the Finger Maze in 2006. The sculpture symbolizes the journey of life. Look at this luxury cruise ship. I wouldn't mind boarding it to go on a trip around the world. The only problem, it's not real. It's a ship-shaped shopping mall lost in a forest of giant Twitter hashtags in Hong Kong. The mall was built in the middle of Whampoa Gardens. That's a huge apartment complex built on the site of former dockyards. The complex is 360 feet long and several stories high. Besides the cruise ship mall, you'll find there movie theaters, restaurants, stores, and even a mini indoor theme park. Well, if not a luxurious sea cruise, then at least I can do some shopping. You can probably learn geography with the help of the world map at Lake Claytroop. Soren Poulsen, a local farmer, created it by hand between 1944 and 1967. The man used stones and grass. First, he dragged lots of rocks to the edge of the lake. Then, during the winter months, he used a sled to bring the stones to their place. And finally, in the spring, when the ice melted, the man easily tilted the stones into place. Soren must have been very dedicated to his idea, because some of the stones weighed more than 2 tons. The world map includes tiny lakes and rivers. It even has a mini boats for people to sail the Pacific Ocean in the summer. There's also an 18-hole mini golf course, a playground, and a picnic area. Now we're moving to China, to a much more mysterious place. Colossal symbols there look as if they were printed on the surface of the Gobi Desert. There have been loads of theories about their origin, but the symbols turn out to be a human creation. Jonathan Hill is a research technician and mission planner at the Mars Space Flight Facility at Arizona State University. He thinks these grids are most likely satellite calibration targets. When you look at a bullford kiwi in the Google Maps version, the bird looks a bit too stretched and kinda skinny, but the national icon of the New Zealand is still perfectly recognizable. In 2007, the kiwi was cleaned and now it looks as white as new. The bullford kiwi was carved in 1919 in the chalk of the Beacon Hill in England. This tradition of carving figures into the chalks of Wiltshire goes back to the Neolithic age that started in 10,000 BCE. These potash evaporation ponds in the USA are out of this world. The electric blue ponds create a shocking contrast with the reddish-brown soil in the Utah desert. They're a place for extracting potassium chloride. It's also known as potash. In Google Maps photos, you can see the most famous and most photographed potash mine. It's located in Moab, Utah. One of the coolest things you can see on Google Maps is the Atacama Giant in Chile. This geoglyph is more than 1,000 years old and almost 300 feet long. Geoglyphs are large designs in the ground. They're usually made of rocks, stones, and gravel or carved in the soil. When this bizarre face was found in Antarctica, it provoked tons of heated discussions and insane theories. But scientists claim there's a more logical explanation. It can be the result of pareidolia. This bizarre effect causes your brain to see structures and patterns where they don't exist. This is the reason why people notice recognizable shapes in clouds, rock formations, and other objects. Up close, the face isn't likely to look like a giant half hidden in the snow. All you'll see will be just ice covered with cracks. But whatever it is, I bet anyone who suddenly sees this face on Google Maps is bound to start getting strange ideas. Lonar Lake in India appeared when an asteroid collided with our planet about 50,000 years ago. The rim of the meteor crater is about 6,000 feet across. The lake itself is a bit smaller, with a diameter of around 4,000 feet. So far, there is nothing unusual about this place. But only until you found out that in June 2020, something happened to Lonar Lake. The water changed its color from green to bright pink for a couple of days. Experts believe this change might have been caused by increased salinity in the water. It could also be the presence of algae or the combination of both factors. In any case, I wouldn't dare to swim in the water of Lonar Lake. Has Google Earth just shown you a colossal target symbol in the middle of the Nevada desert? It isn't a joke, Photoshop, or an art object. Most likely, this huge thing is a marking used as an aerial photo calibration target. And finally, my favorite one, an underwater car in the Bahamas. It's remained on the bottom of the fresh creek for quite some time. No one knows the history behind this unusual find. I'd give a lot to know how this poor car turned up there.
Salar de Uyuni feels like you're standing on top of a large mirror, but it's actually a salt flat of more than 4,000 square miles. It's located in Bolivia, South America's highest elevated country. This natural mirror is a remnant of prehistoric lakes that had evaporated a long time ago. Even though it may look flat, GPS technology proved that some of the landscape has some little defaults that are all less than an inch small. The place is so bogged that it has around 10 billion tons of salt. If you get there at the right time, some of the nearby lakes overflow with a small layer of water, which acts as the mirror of the sky. Many locals extract salt and lithium from here. Don't forget to pass by the world's first salt hotel when you visit. You can find a real rainbow mountain in Peru. Scientists still can't explain it. The colorful peak is hard to reach, but seeing the blue, red, green, yellow, and pink colors in nature is something to remember. Baratara Gorge Waterfall has 3 natural bridges for anyone to walk across, take awesome pictures, and even have picnics. The waterfall is a result of limestone erosion that's been going on for millions of years, even though it looks like someone punched a hole right in the middle. It's located in the village of Tanurine, which is just 2 hours away from the capital, Beirut. The Dead Sea has a high concentration of salt and minerals compared to other seas, even though it's technically a lake. Swimming is almost impossible, but people go there for the natural chemicals for the body. Floating on the surface is a great way to relax. This ancient body of water got its name because no macroscopic organisms can live there, since it's 9.6 times saltier than oceans. Only a few bacteria and fungi can be found enjoying the salt. It's also Earth's lowest elevation on land, at 1,400 feet below sea level. All the way in Saudi Arabia is a rock sliced perfectly in the middle with 2 pieces sitting parallel. What makes Al Nasla so unique is that it wasn't artificially done, but is a result of nature's work over the years. This glacier may look like someone dropped tons of red paint in the middle of Antarctica, but it's actually the natural color. Blood Falls is a result of extreme salted water mixed with iron oxide, giving out this eerie vibe in the middle of nowhere. In Hanoi, the capital city of Vietnam, you can enjoy your coffee just a few feet away from an actual moving train. The locals who live in this neighborhood have to make sure no one is on the tracks when the train drives by twice a day. On a crowded day, you would have to stick yourself on a wall behind you or head inside the many coffee shops nearby. Frozen bubbles are a common thing in Abraham Lake, Canada. They look like some jelly-like substance, but they're just methane gas produced by bacteria when they eat the organisms that sink to the bottom. During the process, methane bubbles are released, but since it's below freezing temperatures, these bubbles become frozen in place. Australia is home to a unique horizontal waterfall on the coast of the Kimberley region. It's really just a fast tidal flow moving through 2 narrow aligned rocks. The tides can rise 30 feet. The falls reverse whenever the tide changes. Also down under is the biggest single rock in the world. It's so big that it even looks like a large hill. It has a circumference of 6 miles and is 1,100 feet high. The edges are eroded since the rock has been around forever. Antelope Canyon in Arizona, also known as the place where water runs through rock, has 2 sections of slotted canyons. Throughout the years, the water running through sandstone has created picturesque formations like no other. In the Philippines, you can swim in some of the most crystal clear waters and discover an underwater world below you in the province of Palawan. The municipality of Coron has white sandy beaches with many small boats riding through the many amazing sceneries. Tristan da Cunha is a small volcanic archipelago in the Atlantic with the only neighboring cities of Buenos Aires, Argentina, and Cape Town, South Africa. It takes 7 days by ship to get to this unique place. If you want to escape from the rest of the world, staying with the 280 locals will make you feel like you're away from everything. An island even more isolated than Tristan da Cunha is Pitcairn Island. 1,350 miles off of Tahiti, this place is a mixture of British, Polynesian, and other Pacific Islanders living remotely with the volcanic soil used for crops. The population is around 50 people. The little island is considered to be the second largest marine protected area. If you plan on visiting, be ready for a long sea voyage on a supply ship that hosts 12 passengers. This abandoned fantasy-like railway tunnel in Ukraine is one of the most romantic places you could visit. Walking through leaves and lush green plants feels like you're in a fairy tale. Croatia's Plitvice Lakes National Park is a major tourist attraction and a World Heritage Site with many unique animals and plants teeming around. It looks like an epic movie set with infinite waterfalls flowing from every direction and the clear lakes all around. Lake Baikal, Siberia, is the oldest lake in the world and contains 20% of unfrozen fresh water on Earth. It's also the deepest lake in the world, with a maximum depth of 5,400 feet. It's one of the most diverse places for organisms due to its age and isolation. More than 1,300 species of animals and 570 plants live here. An underground crystal cave exists in Mexico, and it looks like some interstellar world. It's roughly 1,000 feet beneath the surface, with each spike measuring up to 35 feet in length and weighing up to 55 tons. These are some of the largest crystals in the world. Red sand is what makes this beach unique and why tourists flock to Tianjin, China. A red-colored plant called the Suida salsa dwells in the saltwater. The whole beach is covered in red, with only the top layer of the sea visible. Also in China are the Tianzi Mountains, which inspired a famous Hollywood movie. These unique mountains spread across 20 square miles located in the Wuling Yuan area. Millions of years of rock erosion created this amazing beauty. All the way over in sunny California is Sequoia National Park, home to the giant forest. It's been around for thousands of years. More than 8,000 of these colossal trees rule the land, including 10 of the largest living plants in the world. The General Sherman sequoia is estimated to be up to 2,700 years old and is recognized as the world's largest known living tree by volume. Japan's Cat Island has a population of less than 10 people and over 120 cats. The island is located in a remote region and the locals love it. If you're visiting this place, make sure to bring someone who loves cats. Yemen is home to the oldest skyscrapers in the world and the oldest metropolis. The ancient city of Shibam is considered to be the Manhattan of the desert due to the collection of mud buildings popping out of the desert floor. It was used as a caravan stop during ancient times. These mud brick buildings are 7 stories high and were built out of fertile soil, hay, and water that were made into bricks and left to bake under the sun for days. The ground floors were used for keeping livestock and grains, and the upper levels were places for socializing and catching good views. The chemical composition of the ancient hot springs in Pamukkale, Turkey, makes the water pouring over the edge look magical. They're not only good for cleansing your body, but the mind too. The shape and formation of these rocks aren't a result of some human's work. They were created by intense volcanic eruptions. Scientists are still confused why the Giant's Causeway in Ireland is shaped in such a weird way. Socotra is an alien-like island off the coast of Yemen in the Indian Ocean, with one of the most unique trees ever seen. It's called the dragon tree, and it can only be found on this amazing island. In 2008, it was labeled as a World Heritage Site. Black Falls in Iceland gets its name from the dark lava columns surrounding it. The base of the waterfall has sharp rocks. The entire structure was the inspiration for Icelandic architecture seen in some of their famous buildings. With a population of only 730,000, Alaska is home to almost 8,000 pilots. That's more than 1% of the entire state. There are 6 times more pilots and 16 times more aircraft per person than in the rest of the country. It might seem strange for most people, but flying is a big part of life in Alaska. Despite being the biggest state in America, bigger than the next 3 biggest states combined, it has one of the smallest networks of roads in the country. Only 20% of the land is accessible by road. So, having a boat or a plane makes it a lot easier to get from point A to point B. Being less built up has its advantages as well, though. Alaska has 16 national parks, more than 12,000 rivers, and around 100,000 glaciers. If you want to get closer to nature, Alaska would be an incredible place to visit. You can even see the aurora borealis there. When most people think of the coast, they imagine golden beaches and palm trees, but Alaska actually has the most coastline in America. No other state even comes close, with Alaska having 5 times as much coastline as second-place Florida. Alaska has the lowest population density. It has such a small population relative to its size that if Manhattan had the same density of people, only 16 people would live there. Now, New York City is far smaller than Alaska in terms of geographical size, but more people live there than in almost 40 other states. There are more than 27,000 people in 1 square mile of the city. Hey, speaking of other states, only 1 letter doesn't appear in any state name. Q. Really? Arizona produces so much cotton every year, they can make 2 t-shirts for every American out there. Get equipped for any season with brand new Brightside merch. Click the link and grab your print. The Empire State Building is so big, it even has its own zip code, 10118. It's like a city of its own. If you're on the street and somebody drops a penny from the top of the Empire State Building, no worries. The faster it falls, the more air resistance increases, so it won't reach a speed high enough to cause much harm. It still might sting a little, though. Scientists discovered a unique species of ant that only live in New York City. They were found in just one 14-block strip. They've been nicknamed Manhattans. Sounds like one of my puns, but no, I can't claim credit. The United States' first ever commercial passenger flight happened in 1914. It took just 23 minutes and only traveled a short distance within Florida, from St. Petersburg to Tampa. Yet people paid $400 for the luxury, which would be $8,500 today. The oldest city in the U.S. that has been continuously inhabited is St. Augustine, Florida. It was founded in 1565. Mount Everest is famous for being the tallest mountain in the world, but that's only true if you consider mountains that are above sea level. There's a volcano in Hawaii called Mauna Kea that's actually taller if you measure from its bottom at the seafloor. It is 33,500 feet tall from base to peak, while Mount Everest measures in at a little bit more than 29,000 feet. When in Hawaii, try not to get too close to Kilauea. It's one of the most active volcanoes on our planet. It's been constantly erupting for over 35 years now. The longest it's been inactive was around 18 years, all the way back to the middle of the 20th century. The United States, China, and Argentina are home to the most dinosaur fossils in the world. They have the most individual fossils and the widest variety of species. Speaking of fossils, Hollywood has been around making movies for more than 100 years, from 1910 to be precise. The wild Mustang is an iconic animal and likely one of the main things that comes to your mind when you picture the old American West. But Mustangs are not native to the States. They were actually imported during the 16th century. In 2019, farmers in the U.S. produced over 13.5 billion bushels of corn. Wow! That amount could fill almost 70 million football fields. Hey, what would happen if we popped all that corn? The Statue of Liberty was gifted to the United States by France. Part of its intended use originally was to be as a lighthouse. It guided ships for 16 years, using its torch that was visible from 24 miles away. The U.S. decided to send a similar gift back and gave France a smaller Statue of Liberty 3 years later. You can still see that one today. It's currently in Paris. There are over 14,000 McDonald's restaurants. But Montpelier, Vermont is actually the only state capital that doesn't have a McDonald's. McDonald's once created broccoli that tasted of bubblegum to make a healthy option more enticing. Unsurprisingly, it didn't work out. The microwave was designed by an inventor named Percy Spencer. His amazing creation was only rewarded with a $2 bonus, $29 accounting for inflation. The USA prints 26 million bills a day. Each note can cost up to 11 cents to produce, mostly in ink and materials. They go through 9 tons of ink per day. The paper money in the US also isn't made of paper at all. It's actually 75% cotton and 25% linen. In Montana, there are more cows than people. Humans are outnumbered almost 3 to 1. An average American spends 4.4 years at every job. If you take an elevator to the top of Chicago's Willis Tower during a clear day, you can see up to 40 to 50 miles away, which means you'll see 4 states: Michigan, Wisconsin, Indiana, and Illinois. In Arkansas, you're not allowed to honk your horn when in front of a sandwich shop. True. This one probably tops all these strange laws. In Georgia, it's illegal for a chicken to cross the road. Well, so much for that joke. Meanwhile, in Connecticut, you can't cross the street walking on your hands. When you're in Baltimore, Maryland, you can't bring your lion to the movies with you. If you're tired of seeing giant billboards on the side of the road, you should go to Hawaii. They banned billboards in 1920. The US is in the top 10 countries in the world when it comes to biodiversity. 3/4 of the world's tornadoes happen in the US. Gee, aren't we lucky? The Florida Everglades is the only place on the planet where crocodiles and alligators coexist. Alligators have shorter and more rounded snouts, while crocodiles have long, pointy snouts. When an alligator shuts its mouth, you won't see its teeth. But when a crocodile does it, its back teeth stick up over its top lip. Frankly, I don't want to get close enough to confirm that's true. Lake Superior is the world's largest freshwater lake. It's so big that if you emptied it out, you could cover the entire landmass of North and South America under a foot of water. Americans built the Hoover Dam to control floods, produce hydroelectric energy, and for irrigation water. Its construction used so much concrete that it could be stretched across the entire country or used to build a 2-lane highway from New York City to San Francisco. Americans love pizza so much, they eat around 100 acres of it every day. If we took water from all the rivers on Earth and poured it into the Grand Canyon, the canyon would only be half full. The entire area could hold 2 quadrillion gallons of water. That's 2 with 15 zeros. The title for the fastest-speaking state goes to Oregon. Some scientists studied more than 4 million phone calls and found that Oregon, Massachusetts, and the upper Midwest states have the fastest speech patterns. You can find the word Peachtree in the names of over 70 streets in Atlanta, Georgia. Peachtree Circle, Peachtree Street, Peachtree Center Avenue, and so on. How peachy! Crater Lake in Oregon is the deepest lake in the U.S. at almost 2,000 feet deep. The lake is technically an active volcano, but it hasn't erupted recently, so it's safe to swim in at certain times. But boy is it cold! Uh-oh, the power just went out again. In a lot of cases in the US, this is caused by animals. More than 1,000 outages are caused by animals per year, and squirrels contribute to about 10% of those. Yellowstone National Park is more than 11,000 years old and bigger than Delaware and Rhode Island combined. It has over 10,000 geysers, hot springs, mud pots, and other hydrothermal features, which is half of the total number you can find in the entire world. Just don't go swimming in them. It'll, cook you.
Your heart is racing. You're running for your life from one of the biggest creatures you've ever seen. A giant reptile on 2 legs, sprinting right behind you. You hear the sound of a raging river next to you, but decide not to jump in. Thick leaves and bushes keep blocking your path, and you keep getting stuck in the mud. Everything around you is out to get you, and there's nowhere to hide. You spot a hollowed-out tree trunk and crawl inside. Whatever's out there is getting closer and closer. You hear deep guttural breathing and huge stomping. It's getting closer. You see a large tail from a crack in the tree trunk, swinging and knocking down bushes and small trees. Whatever it is, it's sniffing you out like those dogs at the airport. And right next to your face are giant bugs the size of a house cat. Perfect. You've always been scared to even look at crawly little things, but this one's so close and so big, you can actually see its facial features. It's looking at you like you're the alien. You want to scream, but can't. Then, out of the darkness, more bugs. They're curious things, flicking their antennas all over your body. Okay, this is too much. A bug is one thing, but now, a giant centipede thing is crawling your way. Its fangs are the size of your thumb. You dart out of the tree trunk and come face to face with a giant monster. It stops and stares at you, knowing you have no place to go. Claws and teeth the size of bowling pins. That's enough to keep you up at night. It's getting ready to charge right at you. Welcome to the most dangerous period and area in history for a human, the mid-Cretaceous Sahara. This place was thriving around 100 million years ago in what would now be North Africa. Back then, the continents were all arranged differently, and the weather was wild. Extreme storms were pretty common, and temperatures would rise and fall like a Mexican wave at a soccer stadium. Then, sea levels started to rise. Water flooded the Kem region, an area between modern-day Algeria and Morocco. Over the next millions of years, asteroids, volcanic eruptions, and other natural disasters wiped out everything else. Bye-bye, dinosaurs. Thanks for playing. You probably think of the Sahara as one of the most inhospitable places on Earth, but back when it had trees and rivers, it was even more dangerous. The famous River of Giants was a huge river system that stretched from modern-day Egypt all the way to Morocco. The land was flat and not much vegetation grew there, but it was enough for life to exist. Frightening, scary life. That creature you're staring at, it's a giant, scary-looking theropod, and it's out to get you. Imagine a T-Rex-like dinosaur that's more than 32 feet tall and has an epic jawline. Scary stuff. They were the top dogs in the food chain back then. And that's why this place and period in history was so unique. The entire area had an incredible imbalance between hungry dinos and poor little dino snacks. There wasn't enough food to go around. Scientists were never able to find much evidence of herbivores. That means it might have been a royal rumble of carnivorous creatures waiting to pounce on each other at any moment. So, after a while of having a stare-down contest with a giant theropod, a shadow creeps up on you from behind. You're too scared to turn around, but the growling is louder than anything you've ever heard. It shakes you to the core. You turn around and see a Spinosaurus, and that's about all you can see. You know how they always show the T-Rex as the king of the dinosaurs? Well, this one would be, what, the emperor? It stands about 50 feet tall and has a sail of scales on its back, the size of a regular human. Then add in a crocodile-style snout with razor-sharp teeth and some short, powerful legs. Its diet mainly consists of river fish, but it's looking at you like you're a delicious fish taco. The two alphas are now in a standoff, with you stuck in the middle. But before you close your eyes and get ready to be eaten, they begin fighting each other, knocking down trees. You tiptoe your way out of there and run. The further you go, the better, right? Wrong. Not here, because everywhere you go, there's going to be something dangerous. During this period, there was danger in the sky, in the water, and on land. There were small mammals scurrying around here and there, but they mostly stayed in the shadows to avoid danger. After 5 minutes of running as fast as humanly possible, you make it out of the forest and onto an open plain. Bad move. Now there's nowhere to hide. Suddenly, you hear another shriek. You look behind you. Nothing. It's just short grass everywhere. Then you tilt your head up to the sky and see what looks like a giant bird. Only these are technically flying crocodiles. There were plenty of huge pterosaurs that ruled the skies. Alanqua saharica was a flying reptile that may have eaten fish in the river. Those fish must have been tasty. It had a huge wingspan and long slender jaws. Oh, and it was the size of a small bus. This one found you and is racing down to catch you. You run for your life, again. And this time, there's no place to hide. Suddenly, you feel talons grasping onto you and you're lifted off the ground. You soar up. If you weren't scared out of your mind, you might have noticed how beautiful the giant river channels below you are. The Alanqua maneuvers like a fighter jet, headed for the mountains, dodging all obstacles. You see a large nest with some mini beasts in it. They're hungry and as large as you. Not a great combination. You try to break free, but it's impossible. The creature drops you in the middle of the nest and flies off. You try to cover yourself, but the little ones keep pecking away. It's only a matter of time before it's too late. You look down below you and see the river. You can't tell how deep it is, but it's got a really strong current. You're out of options. You dive into the raging river and get dragged along with the current. Safe for now-ish. Imagine it's 2021. You're walking along one of the hottest and driest places on Earth, the middle of the Sahara Desert, only to find fossils of oversized fish. They ranged from bite size to bus size. Even freshwater sharks lived there. These weren't your average little fishies. Judging by their teeth, those guys meant business. You might even find a giant sea turtle swimming around. Okay, back to your wacky adventure. Luckily, you wash up on a safe sandy part of the river where you're able to relax. You drink some river water and try to find a safe place to make camp. Every noise you hear makes you jump. You sit down and try to enjoy the calmness of ancient Earth. Just when you feel you can finally catch your breath, you see a Spinosaurus walking along the river on the prowl. You run off and hide under a bush. It passes you by. You're safe. Or not. It turns, shakes the bushes, and sees you. Just then, a large boom scares it away. It's the sound of you jolting awake. You turn on the light and see your cat staring at you. Those dinosaurs seem so real, probably because of that documentary you were watching right before bed. The entire mid-Cretaceous ecosystem depended on rivers for daily life. Just like all ancient civilizations, rivers were essential for the creatures of the time. And very recently, scientists discovered a new species of snakes that went extinct back then, with no known descendants. To understand these ancient ecosystems, it's important to know a lot about fossils. You might find two different fossils side by side, but those animals might have lived millions of years apart.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos.